What's up, guys? This is Justin with IGN. I'm here with Vince.
Hey guys, what's up?
And you are reviewing Wargame Airland Battle.
That is correct.
We're taking a look at the game right now. So I guess, I know a little bit about this game. I know it's an RTS. I know it does some things differently than some other games. But, in a nutshell, what sort of separates this game from, a StarCraft or a Command and Conquer?
Sure. Well, the first thing that sets it apart is what you're looking at right here. Like, the fight just started, and already all my units, like the core of my units, are already on the table. So this follows more of a model like if you've ever played a tabletop strategy game like Warhammer or anything like that. You spend the whole opening part of the game kind of setting up your army in advance. So there's not like this opening salvo of just economy for 8 minutes or anything. It's just pretty much you go set everything down, and you're already making maneuvers from the start of the battle.
Right. You just plop units, and then you're sort of immediately in the fight.
Exactly. So I'm playing my custom 1975 era Soviet deck.
That's actually a good lead in here. So the other thing that sort of separates this from maybe some other real-time strategy games is there's definitely like a deck building element, or an element of you plan what units you want to have into advance, and you choose to take those units into battle with you. Correct.
And so in this case, I decided to go with a, Soviets obviously known really well for their tanks. And what's nice is that when you choose to go with a specific era and mobilization, like an armored unit, like I have here,
sure,
you get access to a wider range and a greater number of units. So I can afford very easily to put just a huge armored column like this one you see here together.
And that's something that's sort of unique to the Soviets, right? Like other, you said you have a Swedish deck and some other decks that do, you can have very different loadouts for different scenarios.
Absolutely. In this case, because it's an armored loadout, I get extra slots for tanks. And because I've gone with a 1975 and prior loadout, it allows me to have a lot more, in terms of quantity, a lot more of them on the field at once. So even if I were fighting, like, say, a more up-to-date, like, United States Marine Corps build with stuff from the 80s and early 90s, yeah, they'd have, like, more advanced tanks, like an M1 Abrams, but
sure,
they'd only be able to field so many of them, whereas I'd have this massive column. Like, this is 16 tanks. It doesn't even represent a fraction of what I can put on the field, so
gotcha.
I'm just stuffing it right down their throat early.
And it's worth pointing out we are sort of in a single-player skirmish right now just to show off the game.
Exactly.
It's got multiplayer, it's got a campaign, all that usual stuff. You can read all those details in the review. I guess the other thing that jumped out at me about, sort of reading your review text is that this isn't a game where you have sort of magic boxes that will puke out an infinite number of units, right? Where, like, the Command and Conquer StarCraft deal where you can just make an infinite number of Marines.
Sure, absolutely, and that's one of the things that makes this really unique as well. Like, if you look at, my production menu here, each one of these, like, I go to tanks, and I mouse over, and you can see, 26 elite T-72s and 20 elite T-62s. Mm-hmm. Now, these are actually really high numbers, again, because I'm using a 1975 and earlier build. Oh, we got some action here.
Yeah.
And because of that, I've got a lot. But, if you went over to, like I said, United States Marine Corps, they'd have M1A1 Abrams, but they'd probably have 10 of them.
Gotcha.
Or 12 of them. That's what they've got to work with for the entire fight. So there's no infinite resources here. Everything is precious.
And so let's actually talk a little bit about those stats, and I noticed that stat screen looked very, very intimidating, when you were mousing over one of those units.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So, like, if we can look at, say, the T-55 here. So what's nice is that even in-game, when I've selected a unit, I can just press a button, and I can bring up a detailed stat page.
And all of this stuff matters, and I'm hoping that the campaign or other elements sort of ease you into some of this, and by the end you kind of understand it.
It is a little bit trial by fire, but what the nice thing is that if you see here, like, the tooltips are very helpful. Like, you see little abbreviations like KE or AOE, and you're like, what does this mean? And then you just mouse over it, you're like, oh, okay.
Anti-armor rounds.
Anti-armor rounds, and
sure,
as you get closer to the target, it does more damage. And
sure,
so it starts to make a lot of sense once you start exploring this screen and exploring the armory. Initially it's a little bit intimidating, but once you look at all of it, it really puts it into practical terms. Like, you might not know all the military jargon, but you'll definitely not need to know all of it.
So this seems very, very cool. It's sort of a different take on the military strategy genre, which has been done a lot. Lots and lots of sort of deep statistics for players to drive into. Deck building that sort of lets you customize your loadout. the visuals you point out in your review are, realistic. It's not an incredibly gorgeous game, but, it's not really trying to be.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not going to blow your mind with amazing particle effects or kind of super high poly models, but it certainly conveys the action of war. And the sound effects are very authentic. And one thing I really do like is if you get up like really close, all of these tanks are modeled exactly after their real life counterparts. These are not like generic tank number 1 or 2. When you go into the armory and take a real look at this stuff, you can really see that all this stuff is authentic. And I like that even though the game does have this big picture look to it, you can get really big picture.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if we could see, I think I should have a jet coming in here.
That's actually a great point. There are what I think you say hundreds of like real world military units all recreated pretty faithfully.
Absolutely.
From tanks to jets to
see this is a MiG 25P, and like I can get in really nice and tight on this.
That's awesome. So, I mean, you like this game a lot. You're giving it, in the 8s. It's going to get in the 8s a great score from IGN. That's our label for anything 8 and above, in between 8 and 9. So, can you talk very briefly about maybe why it didn't get a higher score?
Sure, absolutely. I think one of the only things the game is missing is, and the areas it's lacking in, is in the campaign. The campaign is an interesting concept for sure.
Uh-huh.
It basically puts you right into the middle of a hypothetical situation that might have happened if NATO and the Warsaw Pact had ever gone to war,
sure.
And how that combat would have played out.
Yeah.
And asks you to kind of manage on a day-by-day basis what combat groups to deploy where, and running bombardments and keeping your men rested, and basically
sure.
managing all these resources of war. But the problem with it is that no matter what you do, everything always comes down to a basic skirmish, and you really don't have a lot of time. They give you basically 20 minutes to kill as much stuff as you can, and you just have to find and kill stuff. And it really, really undermines the strategic and kind of more methodical pace that the game tries to establish.
Well, fair enough. I mean, for a game like this, it sort of sounds like multiplayer is where it's at anyway, just
totally.
like any given strategy game. And there are sort of robust multiplayer options with stat tracking and different modes and, replays and, sort of all the usual functions that people would expect.
And the big thing is definitely the big 10v10 battles, which are just insane. I mean, it's just
awesome.
An unbelievable number of things going on at once.
Well, Vince, thank you for sort of coming in and showing us a look at Wargame Airland Battle.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure.
If you're a strategy gamer, obviously this is getting a very positive score from IGN, from Vince here, who, we trust implicitly to know what he's talking about with strategy games. Remember, we're always kind of reviewing all the hottest, strangest, from big games, small games, everything in between on IGN PC, so make sure you're keeping it locked to IGN.com/PC.